Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. And my name is Toby Levy. I was born the year Hitler came to power, which is 1933. I will tell you just 5 minutes of my life before work. I come from a very small town, um, a small village, but it's very big to a big, beautiful, big town, Lvov. My name of the town was Chodorow, next to a big, beautiful city, very similar to Vienna, absolutely beautiful. Lvov had many, many thousands of Jews, a beautiful, beautiful city with a lot of Jews. Ours was small. We lived next to each other. I call it, we made our own ghetto. We lived next to each other, most of them, because the synagogue, the temple is there, the parents are there. My father was a soldier in the First World War, 1914. It was in the whole area it was Galicia. The whole area was occupied by the Austrian Empire. He was a soldier for for Austria. He wore a German uniform. He fought for Germany, the First World War. When the war ended, he was in Italy. He hitchhiked all the way home back to Chodorow, and he always told us when he came in how the inflation was big. You needed a sack full of money to buy something, and the next day you needed more. So everybody was very poor and hungry. It was a very tough time. It was 1914, 1918, the war had finished. By 1939, when I was born, it was beginning to be a little bit better even for the Jews. We lived in my paternal grandparents' house. We weren't rich, we weren't poor, but I don't remember missing anything. We lived my grandparents' house. We had 2 rooms. My father had a store. It was a main floor was the store, and 2 flights up, which the whole family, my father's family, lived in their house. My mother's family lived closer to the station. My grandmother had a small farm, dairy farm. So life was not bad in 39. In fact, when he was doing so well in his business that he was building a house up the hill, not too far from where we lived. So he was by 1939, my mom was busy buying furniture for the new house. However, 1939, Europe, Germany, Jews had a different view. Okay, what I want to point out, the difference. We lived far away from Germany. The German Jews in 1939 already felt what is going for them. However, we in 39 did not understand what's going there. We didn't connect the dots that it's going to go further. We thought it's only in Germany, but the Jews here in Poland are doing okay. I remember the men used to come meet in our house and talk about the situation of the war. Nobody, not a single person thought what is going to happen. So that means we were off guard and did not understand. Now that I try to emphasize because I want it to be a lesson to understand when something happens. I give you an example. In Pittsburgh, when Pittsburgh had a guy attacking the synagogue and saying he's got to kill Jews, the Jews in New York should be able to act and understand what it means. It's not far away. However, going back to 39, nobody understood. Life was going on. We didn't add the dots. Life was going on in Chodorow. When the Germans, when Hitler came to power in 1939, he led the Jews in Germany. However, everything was okay. 1939, Hitler divided Europe. Half of Europe was occupied by the Russians. He made a pact with the Russians, excuse me. Germany made a pact with the Russians. Half of Europe, my part, which is closer to Eastern Europe, closer to Russia, was occupied from 1939 by the Russians. My husband, however, he lives close to Germany, Poland close to Germany, was occupied by the Germans from 39 on. When the Germans walked into his town, they took his father and all the male young boys, he was 13 years old, into labor camps, working camps. So he was already from 39 on. I had the Russians. My father, I have to give credit to my father, thanking him because I'm alive thanks to him. Somehow he looked more further down than most people. He understood that something is brewing not the right way. So when he understood that the Russians are coming in to occupy my part, he better hide his merchandise and be a simple man, not a businessman, because the Russians would take him that he's a bourgeois, a rich man, and they would send him to Siberia. Hindsight, this would have been a better deal than staying in Chodorow, but for the time he thought he was doing the right thing, and he did. When the Russians walked in, he was a simple man, nothing built, so they gave him work and life went on. My sister went to school. I never went to school before the war because in Europe you don't start school till 7. I was only 6 in 39. Life was okay, 39, 40, 41 for me. 41, the Germans broke their pact with Russia and attacked Russia. So the Russians started, so my town, I'll go back 1 minute, my town had a train, which is unusual for a small, had a train, a sugar factory and a lumber yard. A lot of people tried to get on that train. It was impossible because mostly what the soldiers occupied the train and they ran away to, nobody stood up to the Germans. They all left everything and ran further out into Russia, deep into Russia. A lot of single guys were able to get on the train and run with it. My father did try, but we couldn't get on the train. So what did he do? He took a horse and buggy and we started running with a horse and buggy. But he realized we can never get, he went a few towns, he realized we can't get on the train and the Germans are coming faster than usual. So what is he going to be stuck in a town that he doesn't know anybody? So he turns to my mom and says, you know what? We are much better off going back to Chodorow because everybody knows us there. Here we are strangers. We turn back, sure enough, as soon as we turn back, get to our home, we lived in the center of town in the Rinnik. Rinnik means a square where you do your marketing. That means all the villages come to the market and exchange, they sell their stuff and buy. So it's a big square market. It's called the Rinnik. I'll never forget, a couple of days after we come back to our home, the Germans walked in. Well, let me tell you, life ended at that day. Walked in with power. All the Jews out into the Rinnik. Most Jews lived in the center, so we're able to get out. We came down, my father's holding me, my sister on the right, left, I'm on the right, my mother coming. Some didn't come, that lived a little further away, but 99% were on that Rinnik. And they started giving orders. I didn't understand, in German, of course. They didn't understand, but didn't just give orders. They were screaming the orders at you. From now on, you are no longer citizens. You have no rights. Whatever you have is ours. Finished. On and on and on. And at the end, they give you an example. He takes one young man that had a small little beard. This was their symbol of dehumanizing you. In the center of town, they cut his beard, put him on his hand and foot. A German puts his foot on his back and says to us, this is who you are now. You have no longer any rights. And everybody has gone back to work. We can take and do with you. They didn't talk anything about children. Parents have to go to work. We cut, and everybody has to wear an armband. For us, it was an armband, a 5-inch white armband, in the center a blue star. You have to make it yourself and wear it on every garment. You can't go out without it. When we come upstairs to the house, my father turns to my mom and says, this is it. This is not the usual pogrom. This is not what we thought it might be. This is the end of all of us. This is no fun. And right away he says, I don't want it. I had an older sister. She was 4.5 years older than me. I was 6, so she was 10. Her name was Betty. She died in the United States, breast cancer, and she was 64. So she was in charge of me. So my father says, you kids can't go out. The parents have to go to work, but you kids can't go out. He was afraid. If I wear the armband, the German know I'm Jewish. If I don't wear the armband, the Pole or the Ukrainian will tell the Germans she's a Jewish girl and not wearing the armband. This is what my father felt was going to happen. So he said to my sister, you are in charge of Toby. You're going no place, stay home, no out till we come back from work. My father was lucky, got a job working in the lumber yard. Why was he lucky? Because not only Jewish slave labor worked there, the Ukrainians and the Poles. And everybody knew my father. My father was a third generation born in Chodorow. And he was evidently a good guy. He was a merchant. He was selling, he knew people. I guess he was liked and respected before the war. So he was hoping on that. And he did. My sister and I never went out. Only once do I remember a horrible sight. We were both standing in the window, kitchen window, which was to the center of the town, the Rinnig. Germans walked back and forth watching. A little girl sitting on the stoops and crying. The parents must have gone to work and she walked out. Didn't have anybody take care of her. The German was annoyed she's crying. He picks her up with the left hand. I'll never forget that. With the right pistol, he shoots her just like that. The girl drops dead. My sister and I, frightened and petrified, went underneath the kitchen table and waiting for our parents to come home from work. When they come home, we tell them what happened. They don't explain. All they do is say to us, from now on, you don't look at the windows, sit underneath the table. Of course, we obeyed. We realized, as young as I was, even younger than I, all the children, whoever I speak to that survived in this age, say, when we looked at our parents, we understood it's trouble. We can't ask anything from them. They can't help us. We just have to keep quiet and obey them. This is how every child did it without even being told. I was 6, 7. This is what I learned from 6 years old. I looked at them and I understood they can't help me. I can't ask anything. My father was lucky working the lumber yard, as I said, because everybody knew him, sure enough. In between, they picked up people. They wanted people to put on the train, and whoever went on the train never came back. We had to deliver a certain amount of people. We had a Jewish Gemeinde, which means a Jewish leadership that the Germans came to. Don't want to get involved with that conversation. All I know is one day, one of the guys comes over to my father. My father's name was Moshe Eisenstein. He says to him, Moshe, it's going to be a big aktia. Aktia means killing, murdering. You better find a good hiding place, not just behind the door, he says to him. There was his first help. He came home, tells it to my mother, and he says, we have to find a hiding place. Okay, it's to me, this hiding place is a miracle. Every house in Europe has a cellar, a big cellar, not basement like the United States, you go into the house. No, you go into the cellar from the street with a big iron door. It's very cold in the cellar. You storage in the cellar everything. You keep everything in that cellar. That cellar is like a refrigerator. So he figured out his sister's apartment, she lives on the main floor, would be right in front where he wants to make the cellar one wall, a new wall, should be smaller. To get into the hiding place, he would do it. The stoves in Europe are huge, heavy, on standing. So what underneath the stove, he cut out the house is from bricks, so the walls are heavy. Cut around enough for a person to crawl through. Once, where did he get the stuff to build the wall? He worked in a lumber yard. So he was used to steel, the bricks, and the mortar, whatever he needed to build the wall. Sure enough, once they caught him, took him to the Gestapo, wanted to know why, I imagine. I don't know what he told them. All I know, he never came home that night. My mom went looking and she found him in the Gestapo. It was all black and blue. I've never seen my father look. Nobody thought he'd get up in the morning and go to work. But he knew if he stays out more than a day, the next day they'll pick him up and put him on the train and he's never going to come back. So he stayed home one day, the next day he went to work. He finished the hiding place, everything in order. So all four of us would go there, his sister too. He did not take the remainder of the people of his family that lived in the house. I asked him that questions and he answered me once. If I wanted to save everybody, I couldn't save us, or I could only barely concentrate on us. And he was right. Sure enough, the same guy comes and tells my father, I think it's going to be this weekend. You better be prepared. Sure enough, it was Friday. Comes home. He says, we're going to go in hiding this weekend. We went into hiding, us four, his sister and 3 children, 2 boys and a baby girl. My grandfather lived with my aunt. He did not want to go. He says, I'd rather die now. We went all in hiding Friday night. Sure enough, Saturday morning, we hear banging and screaming, house screaming, the Germans, the dogs screaming, get out, get out, get out. Late in the morning, they come into my aunt's apartment. My grandfather sitting on his chair, and they say to him, come. He says, no problem. They shot him right on the chair sitting. Of course, we heard when they shot him. The day was long. A whole day we didn't hear anything, but very, very late in the evening, the cellar door opens up. I was not the youngest, but I was maybe too far away from my mom. All I did is very quietly said, just like that, they heard the noise. My mom grabbed my hand. We all stopped breathing. My aunt put a pillow on the baby, and the Germans started walking down the stairs with the flashlight looking. We were, okay, he built a new wall. He put stuff against the wall, but he was afraid if they recognize it's a new wall, not a normal wall like all the others, they might touch it and it will break. It's on one single wall. None of us were breathing. As they walking down, a cat jumps out from the middle, wherever she was, between boxes. He gives a big meow. And the Germans started laughing and said, it's only a katze, it's only a cat. He turned around and walked out. I think this is a miracle. Oh, whatever you want to take it. Oh, I was meant to live. This was our first miracle. We stayed there a few, maybe a day or two, I don't know how many days, till somebody came to tell us it's all over, and we came out. Right after the big acts, there was not too many Jews left. Some that picked up on the transport or whatever they did with you. They came out, they said, we're going to relocate you to Lvov. It made sense because there were so few left. Lvov is a beautiful big city with a big, big ghetto. Maybe 20,000 Jews. But my father comes home and sits and talks with my mom. I don't know what they were saying, but he comes out with a statement and says, you know what? I'm not going. I don't believe them. They're not going to take us there. Mom says, so what are you going to do? Where? What are we going to do? There's nobody. Nobody's to help. No one. There wasn't a single soul to tell you what to do, where to go. Left, right, up, bottom. All the gates are closed. She says, where are we going to go? He says, I don't know. I have to think, but I know I'm not believing them. You know, the Germans used language of deception. But even if you understood the deception, there was nothing in your power that you could do. Next day he comes, they sit and talk again, and he says to my mom, I am going to look someone to hide us. And he tells the same, my mom's sister with 2 younger children was still alive, and her brother with 1 son was still alive, and a single brother. And my maternal grandma. He tells the immediate family what he is doing. My aunt with the 2 children younger than me, one was 4, one was 6, and I was 8 at the time. And my sister was 12. She says, I will look, you will look, maybe she also had a store. She had a store for school supplies. So she knew a lot of people. We'll both look. My uncle, the one had the 1 son, said, no, I'm going to go to Lvov because they're going to give us work there. There's no reason. My father says, no, okay. He's looking, she's looking, and they found a woman. Her name was Anna Struck. She had 2 children, a daughter of 18 or 19 and a son of 16. Daughter of 19, a son of 16. She says, I'll take you. She had no husband. The husband was a train conductor. So when the Russians went away to Russia, he was the driver to Russia. So she said, okay, so where are we going to hide? She lived in the center of town. So in everybody in Europe has, even the living center, have a garden in the back and then a barn, an old barn, not big, a barn. So my father says, I'll make a small divider on the barn. The barn is small, enough for 9 people, 4 feet by 5 feet, head to toe. So, because the barn wasn't big, he couldn't take more. And he says to her, when my father closed the store, remember? When the Russians walked in, we had no money, but we had material. Material in Europe is like gold. So he had 3 sacks of material. He gave her 1 sack and he said to her, here is money, you sell the material for food and buy a livestock to put into the barn so the neighbors won't suspect why you're going to the barn with food and you'll be able to buy food. So she bought a pig and chickens. They were to the left, we were to the right. So when he finished, he built the wall not from brick, but this was from wood because it was inside. So enough was ready. So she took us every night, took the women and children first because we couldn't go ourselves. And at night there was curfew. She took us in a big barrel she had with 2 big wheels, each person covered with hay, got into hiding. All the women went earlier. The 2 men went still to work. They didn't want anybody should be suspicious, so they went to work. Sure enough, when they decided to pick up all the Jews, put them on the train, take them to Lvov, evidently the people must have smelled. You know, people have an instinct when it's death or life. People have instinct. Because when they start picking up, putting on the train, they realized something is not kosher, and everybody started running. My father started running. He had to meet his brother-in-law. They usually had a place that they had to meet him and my single uncle, but he never met because there was a whole commotion. He was able to able to make it. My other uncle, the married one with the 2 children, was able to make it. The single one was not able to make it. They were picking up people, putting them on the train. That's it. 2 weeks later, Anna comes into our office, to our hiding place, I should say, and says, there wasn't a single Jew left in Chodorow. Sit quiet, we'll try. Of course we'll sit quiet. There's nothing we can do with that. So during the day, we'd go out, stretch our legs, go back here, we take chances. Whatever food, the only food she was able to make was potato and bread. My sister had a baker, so she would take the old breads, feed the pig, whatever, and us potato. Much food we didn't have, but we didn't expect. Whenever she gave us was grateful. We're sitting maybe 3 months into our hiding place, 3 adults standing in the center, stretching their legs, and it was very, very beautiful sunny day. The big barn door opens up, and I was standing in the center. Ukrainian police right here on the right side looking in. She knew she has juice inside. He didn't know. The picking chicken starts running to the door because it was very, very sunny. So it was really sunny inside. But she looked at us. He did not see us. Either he was blinded from the sun or busy looking at the chicken. The chicken and pig start running towards the door. But she is looking at us and she's standing there frozen. You could see she's frozen. I don't know how long this took. She finally closes the door, goes away, comes back later, a couple of hours later, and says to us, you have to leave. I cannot take it. I'm scared. I have children. They don't know about you. He saw you. My father begged her, says, no, he didn't. If he did, he would have taken us right away. Why would he not? Why would he leave us? Why does he have to go anyplace? No, I'm scared. You can't do it. You have to go. Okay, you have to go. We have to go. So we're thinking where to go. We go to the forest. You could survive in the forest. In fact, some young people did. They went into hiding in the forest. They were hiding during the day, stealing food at night, but they were young people. Anyway, there was a forest, but you have to, well, we were in center town. So we figured we'd go at night out from here. We are in the center, so we have to pass the other half of town. Then there's a small little lake with no water, not water, you can cross it. Then there's a big, big lawn, nothing in it, open, anybody can see you walking. Then there is the forest. If we make it, we'll try. We have no choice. There's nothing we can do. Stephanie, during that whole day, is thinking what to do. She realizes that he did not see us. You know, Stephanie, to me, was more than a human. Was more than a human. She understood that he didn't see us otherwise, and she could not chase us out. She was above human. To me, to all of us, she was an angel sent from God. What is that? What does she do? She goes to the Ukraine police and says to them, you know who I am, you know my husband, you know my family. Why did you come? What are you looking for? He says to her, you bought livestock. My job is to register it. That's what I came. And she tells him, I'm alone. He says, that's all. So she's walking out of there. She's realizing he did not see it. Here we are getting dressed to go, and she's deciding what to do with us. She has 2 children. She comes home and she tells the children, she can't throw us out. She can't. She's not one of those people that hates. If she hated us, she would have done it. Many people took to hide and then they gave him out. She couldn't do it because she didn't hate us. She tells the 2 children, her daughter's name was Stephanie, her son's name was Stajik, who she has in the barn and what happened, and then we're leaving tonight. The 16-year-old boy turns to mom and says, you can't chase him out. They'll never make it across. I will help you. Together, maybe we can save them. And he says to the sister, you stay away because you're socializing with the Germans. Go away. You know nothing about it. Mom and I'll never forget that scene. We are ready to go. My mom is put, I remember the coat I was wearing, what she was doing, the lecture my father was giving us. He was telling my sister, lectures, forget it. Tajik opens the big door, skinny little boy, not a big boy, says, my name is Tajik. You're not going any place. You're staying here, but this is not a good hiding place. I'll make a better one and we'll try. I'll never forget it. We went up a layer. It's much, much bigger. He put a lot of hay. I could stand. My parents couldn't stand, but they could sit. We could stretch our legs, each separate sleeping. Barns are made from panels. Tajik took the center barn, 1 panel, cut it out inside only. So us 4 children should be able to watch, see there. That's where we sat for 2 years. We had lice, mice, rats. Forget it. But my father was very, very strong. He had a list on the wall, and I wish I would have taken it then. Telling us stories, who we are, what we are, not to hate. And then when I asked him, why are we hiding? What did you do wrong? He says, I did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong. It's the world that's wrong. There's nothing you can do. It's hatred out there. He used to teach us, you can't hate, because if you hate, you will never make it. The hate will eat you up alive. Look with Stephanie. He used to give us lectures, and he made sure, in case we make it, so he taught me the Jewish ABC, to read and to write. He taught me multiplications. He was hoping. He was always, he got up in the morning, positive thinking. We all slept. He didn't sleep at night, in case somebody should scream from a dream. He was in charge of us. And he held us together. You know what? To hide together is not an easy job. When I watched Anne Frank and I saw how they behaved and they are hiding, I said to myself, that's not what we did. My father kept us quiet. My uncle once wanted to know what time it is in the middle of the night. He put a flashlight on. The Germans were right there looking. And you know what? Tajik was right there outside with his flashlight, saying it was him. He watched that barn 24 hours. And my father said to my uncle, you do that again, I myself will strangle you. What are you trying to do? Kill us? He kept us together. Not the bad way, the good way, telling you. Every incident, there was miracles every single day. Every single day. Once I remember, we had 2 pails of waste. We didn't have much waste because we didn't have much food. But when we had it, somehow I don't know how we communicated, but we would put it downstairs and Tajik would empty it at night, give us 3 knocks, and we knew it's him. The same way when they had food, gave us 3 knocks, but we had 2 layers to come down and pick it up. Once I remember they picked up the food, but on the top, we would have one square tile with all of the hay, and that you have to pull down. You shouldn't see the hole. And Germans walked, because second year in hiding, she took in Germans to live in her house. The barn door was always open. They walked around. We asked her, what are you doing? She says, it's easier for me. I have more food and I'm safer. We understood that, but we were in more danger. We understood that. So that time, I remember, as we couldn't close the hole, the Germans walked in. We stood still, stiff, waiting. If they picked their heads up, they would have seen a hole. It was every other day a miracle. But I guess I always call myself, I'm a miracle child. Anyway, I have to go on. There's much more that I want to talk after also. Every single house around her was bombed, not ours. Germans lived there. A couple of weeks before our hiding, before the war ended, she said to us, leaving Chodorow. I'm going out of town with my family because the bombing is too much. So we were left alone in Ak. So my father says, if we lose the roof from a bombing or just whatever, they will kill us. And we almost made it. So we dig another hole. As you walk in the barn, it's from earth. So he dug out another hole, and then a hole enough, just air, enough for adults to sit and a child on top. That's where we were when we heard Russian language. When we came out, it was the Russians cooking food. And we were so hungry because the last few weeks, there was nothing we had to eat. My parents used to go out at night in the backyard, find a carrot, a celery, a radish, whatever they found, that's what we ate. When we came out, well, none of us could walk. The Russians looked at us and said, wow, we look like skeletons. We wanted to eat so badly. They said, no, if you eat, you'll die. There again, we were lucky. Go to somebody that will nourish you. we can't eat food now. So we split the two families. They went someplace, my parents went someplace to somebody, they knocked on somebody that they know. And the woman said, wow, you're alive? She didn't kill us, which is another miracle. Every step of the way was a miracle. She took us in, I'll never forget, she gave us a bath. Didn't have a bath for 2 years. She fed us every day. We were very anxious to get out to see who survived. Finally, we were able to eat some food. We got out. So 31 people survived in Chodorow. All were in hiding. No one came back from any place. We lived to the Russians, saw these survivors. So we lived next. We took one big building. We all lived in one building, and the Russians said, we'll watch you, so stay in one building. We stayed there till 1944, 45. I was liberated in 1944 of June, a year earlier than the war ended. We could never have survived if it was another year in hiding. The food alone, we would have died probably from starvation. So 1 year we stayed there. So when the war ended in 1945, we were able to get out. The Russians let us out on a train going, where were we going? Forward, looking where like my father said to us, if we survive and when there are going to be others looking for survivors. Sure enough, there were many others taking us borders over borders and borders and borders till we got to the American zone. 1 minute, excuse me. I got to the American zone. I stayed in Linz, Abelsberg, which is in Austria. We planned to go to Israel, of course, but it didn't materialize. A lot of options came up. We decided at the last minute to go to the United States, but again, my father doesn't go where everybody else. He doesn't want to go north, so we go south. I came to New Orleans in 1949 of September. I was at awe of United States. I'll never forget coming down with the boat down the Mississippi, looking at each one. I turned to my father and says, what the heck did you stay in this God-forsaken country? Why didn't you come here earlier? He says, no complaints, we're here now. So let's look forward to making it. I'll never forget, you know, when we lived in the DP camps, displaced persons camps in Europe, all of us looked the same. You know, when survivors meet, the first question they ask each other, how did you make it? Where were you? That's our connection. But here, I come to United States, New Orleans, just a week or so, I think a week before the Jewish holidays. My father was Orthodox and he stayed Orthodox, and that's what he taught us. He never wavered 1 minute in any shape or form, did not touch his Orthodox. He did believe in God the same as he did before. He never blamed God, let's put it this way. So when we came to New Orleans a week before the holiday, he says to this woman, he picks us up, I need a kosher meal and I need an Orthodox synagogue. She said, no problem. So she puts us up close to the synagogue and we eat a meal with a nice Jewish family. The reason I want to tell you this, I want to show you the difference between the survivor people and the American people. This is Jewish people. Come to this Jewish gorgeous table with food, with luxuries, food that I never saw in my life, even before the war. I look at them and look at us. We look like survivors. We did not look the same way as they looked. And I felt so bad. If it was a hole in the earth, I would have buried myself. I said, oh my God, how am I going to make it? I can't look like them. My eyes are not as full of life as theirs. I remember he welcomed us. I don't know what he wanted my father to say something. I don't remember the details. All I remember, my father stood up with a glass of wine and wanted to say something. Maybe he did, I don't remember what, but the man said to him, you know what? You're here now, go forward. What I did learn, and everybody else, The American Jews were not interested to listen to us. They were not ready. And you know what? Maybe it was a good thing, because this way we didn't have to think of talking. We were just thinking of making it. Everything is in the back of your mind. It's there. You'll never forget it. But we have to go forward. I think it was a good thing, though, because we did. All survivors, I would say 99, made it. Raised beautiful children. The generation that the survivors produced here are the tops. We stayed in New Orleans a while, and then I came back. I got married. My sister got married to New York. My parents stayed in New Orleans till they retired. My father did what he wanted. He wanted to be a peddler, and he became a peddler. I raised 2 children. I have 2 children. One is an orthopedic surgeon. One is a therapist. They both married, have children. When my husband passed away, I realized I need to do something else, to volunteer. This is where I came to the museum. And the museum was my Jewish Heritage Museum in New York, gave me the chance to open. First, I was a docent, just a docent. I loved it. But every time I gave children a tour, when it came to one part of Poland, I used to say, this is where I was. This is, I can tell you how I survived. Then I became a speaker. And I speak to hundreds of children. My aim is to teach the children 2 things. Not to hate, because hatred brings you what the Germans created. Because you can only kill and torture and dehumanize people the way the happened this war, is when you don't see me as a human. And that's exactly what, because they hated the Jews so much that they didn't see it as human. So I teach not to hate. One time I gave a high school grade, and this girl asked me, did you ever want revenge? Instantly, I said, I have my revenge. My revenge is I made it. I have children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren, and they all Jewish. That's my revenge. I got a letter from her later saying, I never knew we can have revenge without killing. To me, I thought it was something well. And I always teach children, go home, talk to your parents, ask them, what do they know? What do they hear? What is hatred? Hatred produces a worst generation. Even now, the virus that is now, I'm learning to compare, to do. By the way, I have an op-ed in the New York Times about the virus January 3rd. You can look it up. It was January 3rd. It was a nice, very small article. I think I took enough time. I have to leave time for questions. I think I gave you enough. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. We do have a couple questions.
Okay. I knew that. That's why I looked at the clock. I said, it's time to stop.
You can talk all day.
No, I can't, but I don't.
The first one we've got is did you stay in contact with the family that helped you in high school?
Oh, yes, I forgot. I'm glad. Are you kidding me? My parents always corresponded with her, but we never had anything to give her till we came to New Orleans, which took another 2 years. What did you want? She said material, because that in Europe is a big deal. They don't have ready clothing. So we kept sending packages. My parents always sent. My sister, when they died, I was left. I was not in contact. I don't speak Ukraine. I speak Polish, but not Ukraine. I took my cousin and we went to Poland to find her grandchildren. I found her great granddaughter. Tajik died young. We think it's because of the Chernobyl explosion in Ukraine, which was in the 1970s, I think. Only Stephanie got married and she had a child, so I knew that. So I found the granddaughter. I am still in touch with her great granddaughter. I still send money till today. I never will stop till I can never, ever forget. I'm glad you asked it. See, I forgot one question.
I'm happy to have been able to ask that and hear that you're still in touch with them. That's amazing. Have you been back to Poland, Europe in general?
Yes.
What was that like?
I was back one time to all the way back to my home in Lvov, which I realized how beautiful they built it up, all the other areas in there. Then I went back to Central Europe. Yes, I did. Every place I go, I have a picture. I made it. That's even in Paris on front of the arch. I said, I made it. You did not succeed.
I
Yes,
love
I
that.
have.
That
But
is
you know what? Europe and Ukraine is just as anti-Semitic as it ever was before. It's not now. I went back 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I went twice. Anti-Semitism is as big as ever before. And I'm afraid it's here in the United States too. I am scared, but I'm alert.
So what do you what kind of, I guess, advice or like lessons do you want people to take to combat anti-Semitism?
To understand, not to ignore. If somebody says something, don't say, oh, she didn't mean to. Call her on her or him, call on him. Talk about it. Don't allow it to go. If you allow one step and you repeat a lie, if you repeat a lie 100 times, it becomes the truth. You can't allow. The Jews alone cannot do it. The government has to do it. The people have to do it. The children in school have to understand that the hatred leads you to disaster.
Thank you. Let's see. The next question. What was it like for your family and you when you first came to America? What was your experience like?
Not easy, but I have the school I went to New Orleans. They were very nice to me. I was 16 and a half when I came to New Orleans. I could speak a word of English, but I had to go to school. So they put my class, put me in first grade. But I was able to be the other grades, like fourth grade, fifth, because we had school in the DP camps. Don't forget, I didn't from 45 to 49. We had 4 years. We had teachers right away. So I was okay, but I couldn't speak. So they put me first grade. However, by the end of June, I graduated 8th grade. So the kids were very nice. I can't say one bad word on American people. They're very good people. In my opinion, American are very genuine, good people. That's my opinion. I might change it soon. But so far, it's standing still. American people are very good people.
So what you guys went to New Orleans first. What brought you to New York?
You're right. We should have stayed. My sister had contact with a young man from Chodorow on, so she moved to New York and married him. And it's not easy to socialize. It wasn't easy. Although I learned later on, it's easier, it comes easier, but I married a survivor. Most survivors marry survivors. Most of them. It's easier. It's just two worlds. It's just the two worlds. Hindsight, I should have married an American. It would have been much easier life. It would have not been able so involved because two of them married us. So we both have to talk about it. So my parents loved New Orleans. They stayed on. My sister and I married. I married very young, so I came to New York. My husband was a survivor too, but he was in labor camps. Let's see, what else did I forget to talk? I usually tell kids the lectures that I give. Any other questions?
Yeah. Actually, how did you meet your husband?
I came to New York for a wedding. All my friends were in New York. I was the only one in New Orleans. One went to Florida, one went to Minneapolis, the rest went to New York. So when I came to a wedding, I liked it. So I came back to New York. It took a little while later. I married very young. I was under 20. You're married young.
I have one more question. It's kind of a two-part, but when did you really start sharing, and why is it important to you to share your story, especially with children?
I started sharing when I started the museum. When I found my husband passed away, the kids are out. I was still working. I was working till 80 or 81, but I had time. I needed something to do. You can't just sit. So it took a full year till I learned to be a docent. That's how I kept doing it. I think it's important. I think I'm doing a good job because high school, I like high school kids better. Elementary kids are a little younger, so, but I like to involve them for them to understand when you read an article, not to believe what you read. Look into it, who wrote it, find out where it comes from. So, because if you believe it, then you follow, and then you get disappointed, and it's too late. So I'm trying to educate high school kids especially. Come home and talk to your parents if some incident happened. This is how you avoid. This is how you educate them. Where did I get it all? My parents kept telling me, you can't do this, you can't hate because it's going to ruin your life. I have no, thank God, like the virus came up. So how do you compare the virus to the, you can't compare it. This is, but there is fear in itself. So you have to understand each fear and dig into it. But the fear is something that, but you can learn from the fear. But if you know how to take care of it and look forward, this is how I made it. I did what I was told, stayed home, did not, went for my walk, hardly shopped, hardly did this, tried to make it. But I was hoping, but you can't compare it, I said, because I have freedom here. There I had no freedom. Not only no freedom, but the whole world was against me. Not, okay, the virus was and the difference was, you know what else was the virus difference for me? The virus was not only for Jews, it was for everybody. That made me feel good. Hey, everybody's in the same boat. That's how I look. Any other questions?
No, that is all the questions I'm seeing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Who would you have, teachers or children? Who was the audience? What kind of audience?
The audience is